What's up guys and gals? Welcome back to another chess video. This is me, JK Jax, back at it again. Before we get started, I would like to address the elephant in the room. So in the first part of the French defense advance, I've covered this exact position. Over here, there was two other variations that I did not cover in the first part of the video, so I will cover them in the third part of the French defense video. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. E4, E6, D4, D5, E5, C5, and C3. In the second part of the French defense, I will be covering both bishop to E7 and queen to B6. Queen B6, let's get that first, knight F3. And if your opponent plays knight to C6, you actually transpose back into one of the variations in the first part of the French defense. So there's a lot of overlaps in this opening. What is not an overlap is after bishop to D7. You have a few moves. You have bishop to D3, bishop to E2, but to me, the best line is A3. Sneaky move. A5, you play A4. C takes D4 is the most natural move. C takes D4, knight to C6, attacking the pawn. You play knight to C3, knight E7. Now in this position, there's also F6. Now against F6, you play bishop to E3, and the idea is that after takes, you simply play knight takes E5, and knight takes E5, D takes E5. You have an attack on the queen, so your opponent has to play bishop to B5. You will just simply trade bishops. You will simply trade bishops, and then you play bishop to B5, trying to trade another pair of light square bishops. And why is this much better for white? White has some open lines that white can use. The white queen can really come on F3 or even to H5 and start to infiltrate black's position. Also, white can also just castle, and white has open files that he can use for himself, especially the E file and the C file being highlighted right here. So that's why F6 is not really a desired variation for black. Instead, black may want to play something like knight G to E7, which I will recommend knight to B5. We're just here to take away space and really, put our domination in black's position. Knight to F5, and you just play pawn to G4. Kicking away this knight, we are alleviating some pressure against the D4 pawn. Now the D4 pawn in our position is a backwards pawn, so try our best to keep this pawn alive as much as possible. This pawn, although a target, is really doing a lot of work. First of all, it's really blockading these pawns from pushing forward, and it's also reinforcing the E5 pawn. So that's why you need to keep this protected at all costs. G4, black will confirm play bishop B4. Now any other move like knight to H6, you just continue with development, bishop D2. So let's say knight H6, you just go bishop D2, we'll sacrifice this pawn, and in him doing so, we'll play rook G1, and we get very active position. Knight H6, now rook C1. And although we are down a pawn, I say that white has more active play and has the initiative here. Is in control of the game, can control the game of the tempo. That is what initiative means. You have control over controlling the speed of the game, the pace of the game, just controlling everything. Just like how, your girlfriend always control you in relationships. Very, very bad. So, here, your opponent will play bishop to B4 check. You'll play bishop D2, knight F to E7. So, of course, it needs to retreat. Otherwise, you'll just play the same variation where you just ignore, like if your opponent goes here, you just take, and now knight to D6. Now you prevent the black king from castling, and after queen to D2, I would say that this position is more pleasant for white, as the king is already almost closer to the center than he has ever been, and G5 is coming. The position will crumble really, really quickly, as well as, B3 for white. If black plays B3 himself, then bishop B5, and I don't see a way black can make progress, and it's only white here that has the initiative, controlling the tempo of the game, and also black has just crushing attacks like queen to G5 incoming, and it's very, very hard and to see how black is able to defend like this, and black can't make any progress either. It's just being restricted by everything. So knight to e7, you simply snag their bishop. A takes b4. Now a takes b4 is not very good because of the simple move knight to d6, and this of course will take away more space. If knight takes b4, but if knight takes b4, which is the better variation, you play knight to d6 check, king f8, rook c1. And now your ideas are very simple. You want to play bishop to b5, trading away this light square bishop. That will help you to put your knight on a very, very active yet controlling square. And you have the open c file, so your play would most likely involve the queen side rather than the king side. The king side looks dry as hell. It looks like Popeye's biscuit, bro. Like, oh, of course you focus on the plays with more action. That's just common sense. So that's it for queen to b6. What happens if your opponent plays bishop to e7? Against bishop e7, of course, I recommend knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to d3. Bishop to d7 by black. Black can also definitely play moves like queen to c7. With queen to c7, you just castle, takes. If knight to b4, you just play knight c3, and you're just here to, develop your pieces. Knight takes d3, queen takes d3, and white has more pieces developed as compared to black. And I'd say that with the traditional square of, this f6 taken away, black needs to solve a major problem: how to develop this knight. And if he just develops it here, he can just take, and now knight to b5. Goodness gracious. The c file has been opened for white to use. If let's say queen goes back to d8, already rook to c1, and this is coming. It's very hard for black to actually do something here or defend himself, and the best move is for him to castle with a destroyed pawn structure, bro. This looks horrible. It's absolutely horrendous. So of course, we won't dive into this variation. It's very simple how black can actually just crumple and fall. Against bishop d7, I recommend you castle, g5, now h4. Crazy ass variation, but after g4, knight to g5, you want to defend the pawn h4, and of course, you put the knight on a very active square. C takes d4 is the best move by black. If your opponent rushed by taking bishop to g5, you'll simply take back with the bishop. And of course, this is much more pleasant to play as white here, because white is ready to pick up the g4 pawn that has been overextended, and also just has easier time developing overall. Just bishop, pawn takes d5, knight to d2. Let's say queen b6. Okay, trying to trap your rook. Just of course you play this first, in between move, and if queen takes, knight to b5. It's the actual same theoretical idea. It's very similar to a theoretical idea that I've covered in the first part of the French defense, where it involves knight to b5 and going to knight to c7. That's why nobody plays bishop takes, and more so they'll play c takes d4 first. Against this, I would just take queen to b6. Now, if opponent plays knight to d4, you will play queen takes g4. This knight is under attack. It has to go back, and after it goes back, queen h5. And this pawn is being threatened 3 times. What the heck? And there's also mate incoming as well. This is the only move, but you just play knight takes e6. Crazy move. And it's a discovered attack on the knight as well. So if takes, you play queen takes e5. This rook is under fire. Bishop f6, queen f4. And in fact, it's actually safe. Somehow, if bishop to takes h4, which is very natural, you see, oh, it's a hanging pawn. You play knight to c3, and positionally wise, black is just worse here. This is worse positionally for black. Although black is up a pawn, white has more activity. There's already like rook e1, bishop f5 ideas, and this position is very, very, very freaking difficult for black to defend here. So of course, instead of knight takes d4, there's queen b6. Against queen b6, bishop to e3, knight b4, trying to trade the bishop. You play bishop to e2. You really want to preserve your light square bishop, because most of your pawns right now are on dark squares after all. So that means that your dark square bishop is the bad bishop, because you already have sufficient dark square control, and having this bishop here is just, you just have a dead piece that's just blocking in your way or getting in the way of other pieces. Whereas you still lack some light square control, and that's why this light square bishop needs to be preserved. H6 by black, and now you have an amazing move. Knight takes f7, sacrificing the knight, and the idea is that after king takes, bishop takes g4. Now it does not seem threatening yet, but the idea will come into fruition. If king goes back to e8, you just slaughter him with a3, and now the knight needs to go. Now any other moves by black? Yes, king g7. King g7, knight c3, pawn h5, and now bishop takes h5. Simply lovely. Now rook h7 is the only move by black, because you need to free up some space for your h8 square for your king to hide, where in this case you just play g3. Very calm developing move, but yet super effective. Knight here, you just play queen to g4 and you're winning. King h8, and now bishop to g6. The rook is actually trapped here, otherwise it becomes here queen h5 is winning. Knight h6, queen takes, and this is already very unpleasant for black to play. So that's why the only move black can really play is knight to c2. Queen g4 is still a thing, king h8, and again bishop to g6. If knight takes a1, once again you just trade pieces, and now you play queen h5. King g7, only move, and now you just play knight to e2, and you want to bring more pieces into the attack. Now, if the opponent slides back, let's say queen d8, you play pawn h5, so you prevent him from going h5 himself, and now your idea is bishop h3, as well as queen to g4. You just want to attack and annihilate the king as much as possible, and of course you want to slide your knight over to f4. So yes, you are down a pawn, but you have the initiative, you have the control of the game, and you're gonna have to play this a little bit like Mikhail Tal. If you don't like to play like Mikhail Tal, don't go for this variation. If you're a more solid player, yeah, just learn another variation. Sorry, but for aggressive players like me, this is the variation you should be going for. This is the fun one. This is the fun variation. This is how you make chess not boring, guys. Okay, rook h7, trying to free the h8 square for the king. You just play knight to e2, and you're just here to just hunt the king. Whether to go to g3 or f4, both are fine here. I think f4 has more opportunities because you can just go to g6 and really just control space on the king. Now, really, black has no control of the king side. White has all the control in the world, bro. You have world domination. Absolutely fantastic. And black can't do anything about it. So although you're down a piece, you're actually fine. You're actually chilling. A pretty nice position. So let's get back to the real variation after bishop takes g4, king to e8. Against king e8, a3, a3, knight to c6, h5, check, king d8, knight c3, rook c8, b4. Oh my days. And now you can see why this position is absolutely disastrous for black. As you can see here, queen g4 is coming along with queen to g7, absolutely trapping the living life out of the rook. A4, you have rook b1, a4, a5 as well into the mix. I don't really see an easy way for black to defend here. The best move by black is to actually sacrifice back the piece, which is very unfortunate. Of course, b5 is coming up, queen here, and this won't be so pleasant for black anymore. So knight takes b4 is the best move. You play queen to g4, just giving up another knight for nothing. Of course, if he takes the knight here, you absolutely trap his rook with queen to g7. So black had to defend this trap. But you have knight to e4, another brilliant move. And the idea of knight to e4 is that you double up the black pawn for the piece of your knight For sacrificing your knight, you double the opponent's pawns and you have the deadly threat of d5 incoming, which is a discovered attack on the king as well as the threat on this e6 pawn. It's very hard for black to defend himself. D takes e4, a takes b4, so you win back the piece. Rook c3, rook c1, trading rooks, and trading rooks will lead to very disastrous results because just look at this position. Okay, if queen takes pawn, realistically only move, you have d5. So exactly the threat that I talked to you about. You know, this is falling. And if he takes the pawn, call an ambulance, but not for me. E6. Good night, bro. Absolutely good night. And where does the bishop go? Does not have anywhere. Here, rook takes c8. And after here, e7 check. The end is near. You have a second queen. What can you really do? You have two queens. What more can you ask for? A knight to e7 is realistically the only good try, but d6. Here we go. Let's get right into it. d6. I mean, just look at this. This position is miserable for black. Black is up 3 points of material, but he can't really do anything here. His pieces are actually helping him block in his own king. It's insane. Insane position. So, like knight d5 is the only move you can play, and then queen g6. And now the idea is to go bishop g4 and take on e6. Which then you'll be able to promote the pawn something like this. And it's already very, very winning for white. And believe it or not, white is at plus 2.2. What the heck? Anyways, that is it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed and stay tuned for part 3. See you.